So I gave Ken Rurouni's Yang Yang, Chisa, and Suisui Quickswap rotation to a friend, and they told me that they learn better if there's an explanation of what the target effect is, versus just an infographic showing what the inputs are. So here's my attempt at making that explanation. Please do go watch Ken's video, because at the end of the day, it is his rotation and the credit should go to him. First thing to know is that the activation sequence is actually just the looping part plus 3 moves beforehand. So let's just learn the loop first. The loop starts when you intro into Suisui. This actually puts you in the air and the rotation requires you to be on the ground. So start with a plunge attack with Suisui. This is when you swap out of Suisui's plunge to also do Chisa's plunge as well. Chisa's plunge is actually important. It's so that Chisa can get just a little bit extra forte bar. This rotation uses Chisa's skill and basic 3-4 plus an ult, and by itself those 3 moves don't generate enough forte for Chisa's enhanced skill, but with the plunge it does generate enough for you to be able to get the enhanced skill. After you do Chisa's plunge, you do one of Chisa's main swaps. You press E, which causes her next basic to be basic 3. Chisa's basic 3 has a very long swap period, so now you have time to swap back to Suisui and do her basic 1, 2, 3. You know you did it right if Suisui starts spinning. Suisui's spinning generates quite a bit of forte, and it's also the main way you can actually do most of the swapping here. As a bit of a warning here, if you fail to plunge with Suisui at the beginning of the rotation, when you swap back from Chisa, you'll notice that you're in the air here and you'll do a plunge attack instead of doing her normal basic 1, 2, 3. After Suisui's basic 3, you're going to be doing probably the tightest swap in the entire rotation. You want to swap to Chisa's as fast as you can to trigger Chisa's basic 4, which is her giant scissor move, and then immediately swap to Yang Yang. As Yang Yang, the only thing you want to do here is to swap into her Azure stance. But because the skill is usually grayed out, the way to swap stances is to do a basic attack and just spam the E key. Once you get the skill off, you complete the swap by going back to Suisui's and doing her basic 4. This is what it looks like if you aren't fast enough when you swap back. You end up doing her basic 1, and you really want her basic 4 because it generates an entire third of the forte bar. And the way that her buffing works, it's best if you have the forte bar full when you do her outro. At this point, her outro should either be ready or very close to ready, so you can just press the skill and echo button really fast together and outro into Chisa. Once you get here, the rotation becomes super straightforward. You use Chisa's ult and enhanced skill. And Chisa's enhanced mode really only has 2 points you could do quick swap with. The enhanced skill activation and her enhanced basic 2. These are the only 2 moves that have animations longer than 1 second, allowing you to swap out and back in without breaking the flow of Chisa's combo. During this period, when you're swapping out from Chisa, the main goal is to unlock Yang Yang's enhanced skill, or basically use up Yang Yang's forte bar. In Ken's video, they extend Chisa's basic 1 by holding down the left mouse button, thus requiring you to do Yang Yang's basic 1, 2, 3 twice. I personally prefer to do basic 1, 2, 3, then Chisa's non-extended basic 1, 2, then swap back to Yang Yang and do her basic 4, 5. Either way works, but the main thing to know here is that you want to be on Chisa when Suisui's first bar expires. This bar expiring puts a buff on the current active character, such that when they outro, it puts a big 50% attack buff on the next character. If you do things fast enough, you should notice that Suisui's bar expires just as Chisa's big chainsaw chop comes down, but once you see that bar expire, it's safe to swap to Yang Yang. Once on Yang Yang, you don't want to swap anymore. Suisui's buff will not apply anymore if you do, so now it's all Yang Yang. With the swapping done previously with Chisa and Yang Yang, you should have the enhanced skill ready to go, so let it rip, and just hold down the mouse button to do a feather heavy attack. Once that finished, you can do her ult, and because Yang Yang's ult gives an enhanced skill as well, use that immediately. If you're in Matrix, the Tomb Break button should be unlocked by now, so you can use that to cancel the enhanced skill animation, but either way, we come to a small problem. We're currently in Azure stance, not Feather stance. The Feather heavy attack does way more damage than the Azure heavy attack, so if you want to optimize damage, you shouldn't just hold down the mouse button and do her Azure heavy attack. Instead, you want to first press the attack button and spam the E button to swap back to Feather stance and do the Feather heavy attack. Once both heavy attacks are done, you can outro to Suisui and begin the rotation again. Now, remember that Yang Yang stance swap that I call this the tightest swap in the entire rotation? This is why we do it. The rotation ends with Yang Yang in feather form, so if you don't do the stance swap there, you end up in Azure stance after Chisa's outro, not feather stance. This is why we are trying to fit this stance swap in Suisui's spinning move. This is also why Ken's activation sequence is what it is. Yang Yang begins the battle in Azure stance first, so you stance swap at the beginning to match the same stance as if you had just finished the normal rotation. After that is just building Suisui's forte to get her into an enhanced state, which you will notice is the same exact animation as her intro skill. This makes the rotation very easy to remember because you just memorize one single loop, and you add like 4 moves to the beginning when starting a battle. In theory, you could probably have an easier rotation by being Azure stance, so you don't need to stance swap during Suisui's basic 3. All you would change is that you don't stance swap at the beginning of the battle, and you swap to Azure stance at the end of the rotation before you outro back to Suisui. This does make the rotation slightly longer though, but I'll leave it to you if you want to do this easier version. But yeah, that's the full explanation of how Ken Rurouni's Yang Yang Quickswap rotation works. Hope it was helpful to someone.